Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about women in the middle and midlife transition because, as you know, it can be a confusing, weird time in your life. So let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, Women in the Middle. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again. The topic I want to coach you on today is what it means to be a woman in the middle. We're going to talk about what being a woman in the middle is all about, and I guess you could say the who, what, where, when, and whys of what makes you a woman in the middle. We are going in. But just quick, before I get into that, if you want to find out more about how to get unstuck and live your best life in the middle, head over to www.susierosenstein.com/10 questions and grab your free copy of my 10 insightful questions to reimagine your life after 50. Okay, let's dive in. I think we should start at the very beginning, and that's actually the title of this podcast, Women in the Middle. But before I do that, I just want to quickly mention that I am in a cabin right now as I'm recording this, and the birds outside are kind of loud. So I don't know if you can hear them, but if you can, just enjoy. Anyway, I was so excited back in 2017 when I settled on Women in the Middle as the title for the podcast. I thought the phrase women in the middle described this phase of life perfectly. I mean, think about it. This is a crazy phase of life, and it really feels like being in the middle of so many aspects of life. Here are some examples of life in the middle. How many of these midlife situations resonate with you? Are you in the middle of having kids and having grandchildren? Are you in the middle of having parents who don't need help and having parents who need help? In the middle of a career that may not be satisfying anymore, in the middle of having an appearance that's changing, in the middle of dealing with perimenopause or menopause, in the middle of learning to deal with kids or young adults who want more independence, in the middle of preparing and dealing with the whole empty nest thing, in the middle of working and getting closer to retirement, in the middle of being confused about when to retire, in the middle of milestone birthdays that you might think are getting scarier and scarier by the decade, in the middle of just not believing you're as old as you are, in the middle of a long-term marriage, in the middle of a long-term career, in the middle of a gray divorce, in the middle of a solid midlife funk, or maybe you even think you might be in the middle of a midlife crisis. And here's a good one, in the middle of wondering if you'll have regrets if you don't make some changes in your life. Being a woman in the middle can be a challenging time, and learning how to navigate this phase better and have more fun is something that I care deeply about. But when you don't know how to get unstuck and live your best life, especially after 50, the whole thing can feel really overwhelming, that's for sure. So let's start with the most basic part of being a woman in the middle, defining what the middle is. And when I'm referring to being a woman in the middle, I'm really talking about being in midlife. But even the midlife phase is a little difficult to define. But it's a great place to start. So when it comes to the midlife age perspective, if you consult a few sources, you'll find a few definitions. Midlife or middle age is that transitional period of life between young adulthood and old age. And as you know, it's common to have significant changes in relationships, your appearance, your health, and your career in this middle phase. As a woman in the middle, it will likely hit you differently than it hit your mom or maybe even your friends. And that's because we're all different. We are all different, that's for sure. Some of us think this transitional phase is like a crisis, and some of it think of it more as an awakening or an opportunity. Some of us think of it as an end, and some of us think of it as a beginning. Do you know where you stand, at least most of the time? Here's the thing, there's no right or wrong answer, but there are helpful ways to think about it and unhelpful ways to think about it. It's all mindset in the end. As your midlife coach, I help you understand the midlife issues better. I explore different perspectives and options with you while teaching you mindfulness skills that you can apply to all aspects of your life. I help you understand how to be more intentional about your life so that you can get clear about what you want both in the middle and beyond and move toward it on purpose. The surprising thing to many is that as you increase your awareness of your thinking, you also increase your awareness of your feelings. This is gold because it's at the core of you getting excited about your life again and doing what you can to regret-proof your life. So when I talk about being a woman in the middle, that's what I'm talking about. A woman who's in the middle phase like this, going through lots of transitions, wants to get unstuck and be more intentional about her life again. And by the way, also wants to have way more fun. And as a woman in the middle, I believe you owe it to yourself to put yourself first now more than ever. And to do this, you need some mindfulness skills for sure, and also a big helping of curiosity and compassion. Now, what is the middle? Why is it relevant to know? When is it important? And who is a woman in the middle? Again, as I mentioned, there's not only one definition and there's not only one theory. If you want to dig deeper into this topic, just Google stages of adulthood, and that'll take you into all of the research and all of the theories. Midlife is generally thought of as the years between the ages of 40 and 60 or 40 and 65. So I like to say ish. But there's usually about 10 years of wiggle room at either side of this range. So 40-ish to 60, 65-ish. To put it in a bit more context, from a developmental and sociological perspective, when you look at adulthood, there are at least 3 stages. Okay, so like early adulthood, middle adulthood, and late adulthood. And you can totally remember early adulthood. You probably have a lot of memories about that, some that you want to share and some you don't want to share. Middle adulthood is kind of where you are right now, and late adulthood, most of you, as a listener, probably aren't there yet. And like I said, there are a couple of other frameworks to consider, but I don't want to go into that in this episode. In general, though, here's how to think about it. Early adulthood is 20-ish to 35-ish. Middle adulthood is 36-ish to 64-ish. And late adulthood is 65-plus-ish. So there's a lot of ish. Again, there are different frameworks that subdivide these categories even more, but you get the hang of it. It's the middle chunk of life. With middle adulthood, there are lots of biological and psychological changes related to lots of transition and reimagination opportunities. The midlife crisis phenomenon, or what I like to call a midlife funk, sometimes happens in this phase. Not everybody has a funky period, but many do. It's super common. And it usually happens in the 40s or 50s, and it's usually related in some way to the realization that the clock is ticking on your life, and that you may have lived more by this age than the time you have left. Now, this increased awareness of mortality, or what I like to call time urgency, is a big part of this phase. This backdrop of time urgency can lead you to the idea that you're wasting time and not that happy or content in general, that now is the time more than ever before to really be intentional about how you're showing up in the world, how you want to use your valuable time on this planet, and what you want to be known for, and what you want to be your legacy. So that's the overall phase of being in the middle as an adult. But remember how you define something in this phase as a problem. Like if you define it as a problem, that's individual. That's an individual interpretation. But if you're not happy or looking for more, then you may be thinking about something going on for you as a problem. And these problems tend to fall into similar areas and have big overlaps in the way that they affect you. So not everybody defines the same thing as a problem. So if you are 52, one woman might think that's a problem for who knows what reason, and another woman doesn't have any issue with 52, right? If you've been in your job for 19 years, you may define that as a problem, but somebody else who's had a long-term career and also been in their job 19 years might not see it that way at all. So the way you interpret what's going on for you, the factual part of your situation, is highly subjective. The way you think about it is what creates your feeling. And if you interpret it as something's wrong, then you're going to feel differently than you interpret it as nothing's wrong. So I just want to be clear that these things are common, but they're not all interpreted or experienced the same way. So here are the common ones, the ones I see as the most common. Menopause, experiencing the changes and closing the door on this part of your childbearing life can be seen as a problem for some. Aging, like the example I just gave you. How do you feel about getting older, and what you make this mean for you could be a problem for you or not? Your career. Are you doing what you love and what makes sense for you? What you think is important? Are you in alignment there? So you may interpret your career as a problem or not. Relationships. All of the relationship changes with your young adult children, with your parents, with your partners and friends. Sometimes those are problems. Sometimes problems crop up in your interpretation, and sometimes not. Purpose. Starting to really notice a disconnect with your purpose and questions about whether or not you have a purpose at all, or one that you focus on enough, could pop up at a time like this, your purpose. And then there's your identity. Are you who you want to be? Right? And who are you? Do you even know who you want to be? Who are you now that you can focus on yourself a bit more because your kids are grown, or your parents have passed, or that you're in a long-term career but want more, and that you're thinking of what else you could do or that you could be? So all those questions about identity, purpose, relationships, career, aging, menopause, it's not a definite list. It's just what I see as the most common parts of this phase that you might consider problematic and may want to do more work about. Right? So I have seen this sort of thing, like I said, come up a lot. Another thing I think of as quite relevant with women in the middle is the consideration of both age and stage. And what I mean is age and stage combined is another element that is very different for people. You may also feel like you're in a midlife funk outside of the age range that we talked about, 40-ish to 60, 65-ish, or even within the beginning or end of the 40 to 65-ish age range. You may not even think of yourself as midlife. I've heard that from lots of people who are in their early 40s. They don't even think of themselves as midlife. And also, some women in their 60s have told me, "Oh, can we come into the Women in the Middle Academy? Or we're not in our 50s. Is it still okay?" And I'm always saying, you know what? Yeah, it's a combination of age and stage. And if these kinds of topics feel relevant, and you are struggling with getting unstuck and moving forward into the next chapter as you define it, then you're totally in a midlife funk. and you're totally a perfect candidate for our community in many, many cases. So this age thing can really throw people because they think it's a hard line, but really it's a combination of age and stage. So like I said, you might not even think of yourself as midlife when you're in a midlife funk, but feeling funky like this can totally be an in-the-middle type of thing. Now, I've seen this come up in 4 ways. One of the ways is having kids earlier or later than average. The whole kid thing is a common part of the midlife funk. If you had your kids in your early 20s, your midlife funkiness may start at the early end of middle age when you don't even think of yourself as in midlife, like I said. Likewise, if you have had kids later in life, your midlife funk may be a little different too and be on the later side. Another area I've seen this is working in your 60s and not thinking about retirement yet. So I've also had amazing women in the middle clients in their 60s, like I mentioned. They are typically very much working on their career and in their career and making a career change sometimes too, or often becoming an entrepreneur. They're still quite focused on their career and not yet focused on making the change into more of a retired lifestyle, however they define it. And typically, it's no longer earning in the same way. A funk to these women tends to be on the later side. Another way is spending significant time as a caretaker of your parents. So as you may know, being a caregiver for your parents at the end of their lives can be intense and deeply personal in so many ways. Being at this age and stage, no matter the specific age, can definitely bring on a midlife funk. And the 4th way is starting your demanding career very early, like perhaps straight out of school. So I've also coached clients that have had an earlier than normal midlife funk because of the stage of being in a long-term intense career from an early age. Personally, I've seen this with physicians and entrepreneurs the most. Sometimes entrepreneurs are in a family business that they just started in right away, or sometimes they got involved as an entrepreneur very early. So this would not be limited to these two situations, but giving specifics may help you understand how it could happen. For example, if you're in your 30s, but you have had an incredibly demanding and long-term career and feel like you're in a funk, you may need to reevaluate your direction, in your 30s, because you've been doing the same thing for a really long time. Likewise, maybe you're in your 60s and feel a funk coming on because you need more and want to start something new professionally rather than retirement. So this looking for more, looking for something that's in more of an alignment with what's important to you, just not feeling like it's enough, like you might have regrets if you don't connect with your purpose, your passion, if you're not clear on what it is that you want, if you keep wasting time, you have to make a change. That's really what's happening. So don't get too hung up on the age. The middle is the middle-ish, if you know what I mean. So like I said, regardless of your age in these situations, there's more out there for you. What you've been doing and thinking isn't working for you anymore, and you're worried you may have regrets. The thing is that you sense it. Like you may not be crystal clear on it, but you sense it. You may also feel out of alignment. And I know that that's like a coachy word, but you know that something is off. Your life needs to be reimagined. You need to make a change, even if you don't know what the change is. You know something has to change. You feel it. You're not happy. So that really is the gist. And that's the bottom line with the who, what, when, and why. But what about the where? Where are the women in the middle? That might seem like a funny question when compared to the other W questions, but I think you'll agree it's just as important. Women in the middle are everywhere. They're working. They're not working. They're seeking. They're stuck. They're in your country. They're in other countries. They're in your circle. They may not be known to you. They're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And some are in their 30s and 70s. Some of you are in the middle of a midlife funk, feeling stuck. Some are on the other side of it, feeling clear about what you want. Women in the middle are everywhere. They're at your job. They're in your neighborhood. They are some of your friends. They are some of your family members. They are here, there, and everywhere. A woman in the middle is also most likely like you. If you're listening right now, I bet you're one of us. And all of this is so important to know because you need to know that you're not alone. When you're in the middle phase of stuckness, it all feels so heavy and confusing. It is so easy to feel alone. But I think you'll agree, being a woman in the middle has a lot of commonalities and patterns. And one of them is to want more. And to do that, you have to check in with yourself. This may be the first time in a very long time that you've put yourself first long enough to actually explore what you want. You may not be comfortable. You may not know how to navigate getting unstuck by yourself. You may not know what more you're looking for. Your life probably looks pretty good on paper. Your basic needs are likely met, and then some. You may not even feel comfortable wanting more. That's how I felt. It felt really indulgent to me, like, who am I to complain when my job is great on paper? But the problem for me was that I was just there too long, and I had so much difficulty understanding what I really wanted. It was so scary and unfamiliar. And that's why calling this podcast Women in the Middle was perfect. We need a place that's ours when we feel so alone. We need a place for guidance when we don't know where to turn. We need a place to laugh when our problems don't feel funny. We need a place to dream when we don't even know what's possible. I teach you the skills. I'm your coach for this phase of life in the middle, your journey of being a woman in the middle. And my friend, it's my honor and pleasure to do so. If you're new to this podcast, you found a safe place to land, explore, and grow. If you're a regular listener, I love how you've put yourself first and become more aware of what you want in your next chapter. As your coach, one of the things I love knowing that you're learning is how to make the shift to being more curious and compassionate during this middle phase. Mindfulness skills can be learned, but you have to show up for yourself. And every time you actually tune in and listen to one of these episodes, that's what you're doing. And if you need more help, I'm also here for you. There are many ways that you can reach out and connect, both for free and by making an investment in yourself and your personal growth and development. You know where to find me, www.susierosenstein.com. Consider yourself invited to the Women in the Middle adventure. That's it for this episode. As you know, my focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and excited about your life again. Remember, if you want to find out more about how to get unstuck and live your best life in the middle, head over to www.susierosenstein.com/10 questions and grab your free copy of my 10 insightful questions to reimagine your life after 50. If you want to get unstuck faster, there is no better mechanism, no better way when you know you're meant for more like this to move forward with a community of women just like you. I would love to be able to help you find that thing you're looking for. I want to invite you to check out the Women in the Middle Academy. It's my 6-month coaching program where you get all the support you need to apply what you're learning here in the podcast. But more importantly, you get clear about what you want so you don't have regrets. Don't waste another second feeling stuck. Book your momentum call and we'll have a quick chat. Head over to www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com. For show notes and links, head on over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and you'll see the episode right there. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein and I'll talk to you next week.